While Europe was in its dark ages, great civilizations developed in West Africa. Inventive, sophisticated nations that were both politically and economically astute. At the time of his birth, Abdul Rahman's beloved Fouta diallon rivaled any kingdom in its intellectual and spiritual development.
The Fulbeys, they love learning. They take pride in intellectual prowess.
The early Fulbe settlements lay along major trade routes in the lush highlands of what is now Guinea, more than 4,000 feet above the headwaters of the Niger, Gambia, and Senegal rivers. This fertile region attracted travelers from across Africa, who in turn left their mark on the local people.
The Arabs, because they were nomadic people, they were always venturing out. So by the 10th century, you begin to get these movements into West Africa of merchants, people looking for places to make money. Wherever Islam went, it's always had this attraction to local people.
For a time, Islamic culture flourished peaceably alongside indigenous beliefs.
What would account for such a rapid spread of Islam in West Africa is that these were tribal communities. So if one person became Muslim, oftentimes if it was the tribal chieftain, for instance, the whole tribe would become Muslim.
The devout, who came in the late 17th and early 18th century, were more organized and committed to bringing non-believers into the community of the faithful. Those who resisted, mostly animists, were increasingly unwelcomed in Fouta diallon, and many migrated away. Finally, in 1725, Muslims founded the theocratic empire of Fouta diallon. It would rise to be one of the great kingdoms of West Africa, like Guinea and Timbuktu, under an elected sovereign and 8 almami who governed its 9 provinces. Timbo became its political capital for the next 170 years. We arrived at Timbo and entered the city on a banana trees-lined avenue. The rain surprised us at the very moment when the inhabitants were gathered at the mosques. Gaspard Théodore Molien, 1818.
Timbo was at the foot of a mountain. It was a village of perhaps 5,000 or 6,000 people. The houses were mud-walled, conical, with sloping roofs. Almost every house had a courtyard, and usually the courtyards were surrounded with hedges so that people walking the streets and cul-de-sacs could mind their own business when they went by.
Les hommes sont beaux, forts. They are handsome men, strong and brave. They are intelligent. They are mysterious and prudent. Antoine Golbery, West Africa, 1787.
The Fulbe of Fouta diallon placed great emphasis on a couple of things. One was a great care of their hands. The other was their hair, which they wore long in braids, often down onto their shoulders.
So that was their status symbol, and it's like a 3-piece suit or a bow tie, today in America for an official ceremony. That was their dress code.
Les gens sont riches. Toutes les femmes ont... The inhabitants are wealthy. All the women have silver jewelry, large golden earrings, and they wear togas in blue tie-dye. All signs of luxury among Africans. Gaspard Théodore Molien, West Africa, 1818. Beyond wealth and attractiveness lay Fouta diallon's most precious asset. This was a nation deeply rooted in spiritual and intellectual pursuits.
This was a theocentric or theocratic society. Power rested with Allah. The chief, the temporal chief, was just an instrument of God.
And I think that Islam amongst the Fulbe was very important in giving them a very unique identity and reinforcing certain aspects of their personality as a proud people, even amongst other West African Muslim tribes.
Fouta diallon scholars wrote the only version of the Quran in Pular, the local language, while other indigenous literature developed using the Arabic alphabet. There were schools in almost every town, and the kingdom became a magnet of learning for nations in West Africa. Education was Abdul Rahman's birthright.
Because he was the son of a nobleman, it would have been absolutely necessary for him to be not only literate, but erudite, and so he becomes a student of knowledge.
Islam is a very literacy-based tradition. There's a lot of learning that has to happen. One has to be taught the Arabic, rudiments of Arabic, to know the prayer and to learn to recite the Quran and to be conversant with the literature, the sources of the religion.
At age 12, he was sent, his father, noticing his aptitude for this, decided to send him to the large cities of the East so that he could continue his education. This meant traveling about 1,000 miles down the Niger River to the city of Guinée, which was an ancient sub-Saharan town, a market town of great consequence and a center of Islamic learning.
We would consider it the Harvard of West Africa. This is where you went to sit with the cream of the crop. Those scholars would have held their ground in any intellectual circle in the Muslim world.
Abdurrahman was a contemporary of Thierno Muhammadu Samba Mombeya, who is the Shakespeare of Fouta diallon. He may have known the powerful verses and poems of Thierno Samba, written in Pular, but entirely embedded in Islam. And it begins like this. Ya jom nanugol, hedo ha la gorel, jayingel loungel si afa la malal, iungel esaidu Muhammaduel, selenke lenyol futanke laral. Mombenke hodande e lash ariyanke to kappe e malikiyanke datal.
Africa did produce men of learning. Africa did produce civilized, highly civilized individuals and societies. Africa did produce men of dignity and principle. And I think this is one of the very powerful points that the life and times of Abdurrahman Ibrahim drives home for us.